great report. That brings us to item number 11, which is public participation. And I'll remind our speakers that the board welcomes and encourages public participation. We respectfully ask that you adhere to the proceedings and decorum provided in board policy BEDH, public participation at meetings. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Dr. Harris will be keeping time. And Dr. Harris has a card that lets you know when you're getting close on time, so he'll be holding that up. And questions asked during public participation will be handled in accordance with board policy BEDH. I would also remind you that public participation at board meetings is one of the many ways the community may ask questions. The board encourages the citizens of this community to appear and bring before the board any matter directed toward the improvement of the school system and the agenda of the board. Additionally, I would say that asking questions that would be inappropriately identifying a student or family will not be addressed. And the privilege of addressing the board does not include the ability to make any personal attacks on board members, any board members, district employees, or other members of the public. So with that, we will go to public participation, and we have one person signed up, and that is Ms. Jan MacArthur. Ms. MacArthur, welcome back. Former teacher in our district.
Hi, I'm Jan McCarthy, and I live in the district. I live right behind Nursery Road Elementary School. And I came to talk to the board about something that I read in the paper yesterday. It bothered me. As I opened my Sunday paper up, that didn't work. I do read it online. There it was, right there, big bold headlines. Midland school districts taking gifts from vendors for influence over their contract negotiations. So it piqued my interest, and naturally I had to read it. You know, I am a former government teacher, so I wanted to know what was going on here, because as you know, I haven't been here very often since I retired. But here it was, District 5, first or second in the list of taking money from vendors or gifts from vendors and contractors. There it was. So I read the whole article, and I did my math. Your monthly gifts, if you got them monthly, was about $25.
Ms. MacArthur, I'd like to remind you, you said taking money as gifts.
I'm sorry, it was gifts.
Yeah, there was
I messed up.
I don't think the article ever reflected anything like that.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
was only gifts that they talked about. You know, sometimes the press just stirs the pot. I don't know why they do it, but they do. And I think this is what this article was, a stirring the pot. Because if you can be influenced for that piddling amount of money, or gifts that are given for that value, then we have a more serious problem with your ethics and your integrity, which I don't really think we have. So I want you to know that I want to thank you for representing our district, for networking, for our benefit, for making decisions that benefit the needs of our student and staff. Because you know our community watches you very closely, and they question you when there needs to be questioned, and we can ask very hard questions of you. So, but I trust your decisions and the influences that you have, the things that you decide on that are not being made for a bag of peanuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. MacArthur. That concludes our public participation and takes us to our action agenda. And item number 12, which are actions as necessary or appropriate on matters discussed in executive session. And we had one item, item 3A, which is selected employment item shown in the Exhibit A. Excuse me, 3B, correction, 3B, selected employment item shown in Exhibit A. Do I have a motion? Ms. Hutchison.
I move that we approve the selected employment items as shown in Exhibit A.
Second, Mr. Cates, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. That brings us to item number 13, which is our second and final reading of the proposed revisions to the G Board policies shown in Exhibit B. Do I have a motion? Mr. Cates.
Mr. Chairman, I move we give second and final reading of proposed revisions to G Board policies Exhibit B, which include GBA, open hiring, equal employment opportunity and affirmative action, GCE, professional staff recruitment, GCEC, posting and advertising of professional vacancies, GCF, professional staff hiring, and GDF, support staff hiring.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Do I have a second? Mr. Lovelace seconds. See any discussion? See none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Brings us to item number 14, which is second and final reading of proposed revisions to Board Policy JFBA, intra-district transfer and withdrawal, shown in Exhibit C. Do I have a motion? Mr. Cates.
Mr. Chairman, I move we give second and final reading of proposed revisions to Board Policy JFBA, intra-district transfer and withdrawal, as presented in Exhibit C.
We have a second. Ms. Hammond seconds. See any discussion?
Mr. King, I
Yes, ma'am.
had just one question, clarification. Under the page, it doesn't have a number, but it's children of employees. Can a teacher choose, I know they can, wherever they may live, they can take their child to where they teach, or can they choose any school if they're a teacher? Could they send their child? Could they have any choice? Somebody asked me that, and when I read this, it may say it, but I missed it.
It is found within that particular area, children of employees, and it basically indicates that they can't do that based on the appropriate grade level.
And if there's room, maybe.
Well, if you don't mind, for the sense of
Yeah, I
purpose
got
here,
it.
let me just kind of quote that if you don't mind.
Okay.
They have the option of enrolling his or her child at the employee's school, the appropriate grade level in the high school, attendance on the cluster boundary of the employee's location, or the appropriate grade level which is en route to the employee's school. Those are the parameters in which an employee or teacher, in this case, would qualify to have their child attend school at a
So
chosen
that,
school.
you got, I read that, but I wasn't sure if that was, they could really choose any school except for where they were teaching. Okay.
Excuse me, did you say that, I'm pretty simple on this, but let's say you lived in Chapin and you taught in Irmo and a Dutch Fork school was on the way back, could you do that? If you were,
If there's space within the school,
okay,
at that particular school and that particular grade level.
okay.
Any other discussion or question? Ms. Hutchinson.
I have two questions. The first, I'm looking at that first page, and I see two possible obstacles for students and families with limited resources. And I'm just wondering how the school district is helping students participate in our magnet programs. One is, I guess, under magnets and schools of choice, it says to make a selection, an online application must be completed during the annual application process. How do we make it possible for families to apply online, since I'm sure that there are many who do not have internet access?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Giuliano, who oversees the magnet school program.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Actually, families have the ability to go to any school to fill out the application there at the school, or they can also receive a paper copy of that application that they could turn in and be submitted, so they could do that. So there's other ways around just the online application if they don't have access to it.
Do you think that is necessary to add or a paper copy or anything, the board, or is it just everyone knows to do that? I don't know if it's important for a policy or not.
We certainly publicize it and put it out there, but it's certainly something we could consider if that's the request, that you'd have to put it into the policy.
Well, I don't know if it's necessary. We can see unless there are other, members of the board, but I am glad that we publicize that it can be handled. And the second, within this same regard, is the fact that parents and legal guardians must assume all responsibility for transportation, and I certainly understand that. That's a financial decision, and we don't have enough buses, and as difficult as it is. However, I do see that there's a problem if a family really does not have the resources or for whatever reason can't get their child to the magnet school. Do we have any alternative ways for students who want to go to these magnets and they just may not have the transportation, either because of finances or both parents working, very demanding jobs that require time that they can't drive their students?
With our new Discover 5 magnet, the federal government actually allows for transportation within that. So we are allowed to offer it to the schools within our new Discover 5 magnet program. So that would be H.E. Corley Montessori School, Lee Park STEAM program, and then certainly Nursery Road's art program, and then Irmo High School's partnership with the center. We are offering transportation for those schools because the federal government began to allow us to write that into the grant. For the schools before this last Discover 5 grant, we cannot offer transportation based upon what the federal government allowed at that time. We do have some families that are able to carpool with other families to be able to make that happen. I know our Escalares program, that happens a lot, especially with families that live out in Chapin or other areas. A lot of carpooling takes place. So they try to find other families that they can build relationships with to help to get their child to school.
Thank you.
Any other questions, anybody? No other discussion or question, all those in, Dr. Melton, I'm sorry.
I'd just like to add, with
Can you
Mr.
see yours?
Leno has given a summary of that, but for Spring Hill High School, School District 5 has, of course, the board has supported the cost of transportation to Spring Hill. So Ms. Hutchison, for those that are not in Discover 5, there is a fiscal impact that would be made if we provided transportation to all. For Spring Hill, of course, the student rides the bus to their home zone school and then is transported through a shuttle, but we've incurred the cost because the board has had that vision. Irmo, for example, has actually had 2 separate routes running back, one to go to the campus for athletic involvement, one to go directly home, and the board, of course, was involved with that decision as well to make sure. So if we were to expand, that would be a fiscal impact that we would need to do some assessment of, and Mr. Richardson and Mr. Wiseman would need to have the opportunity to try to predict how many students may need to be involved with that and what kind of cost projection might we have. So yes, ma'am, we're sensitive to that because we understand that transportation is a resource that not everyone has access to, or maybe schedules are conflicting that prevent the access. But our concern would be the fiscal impact. We currently do not have the funds to expand it farther than we have earmarked so far for this budget.
Thank you. That is helpful.
Ms. Hutchison.
On the second page, I have a question about students who move during the school year. It says here that a parent or legal guardian who moves from one attendance area in the district to another within the district has 2 choices. They can either transfer their student immediately or transfer the student at the end of the semester. So I would assume it would be January, whenever the semester ends. And I'm just wondering, what would be the reasoning why we wouldn't allow that student to complete their academic year at the school they had been attending if the parent is willing to provide the transportation? If there's some reason why we would require them to change schools mid-year.
Let me answer that in two statements, Ms. Hutchinson. One is that families who move certainly have an opportunity to request by way of hardship, make a request to remain in that particular school. And that is something that they can provide in writing, kind of stating their reason or rationale for wanting to remain there. A reason as to why a student would not could be something as behavioral considerations. Tardiness to the school, that because they moved and there's difficulty getting to school on time. Things of that nature could be reasons that would say, you're better suited in the school which you're zoned to attend, which is closer to your home, where transportation is available, so forth and so on. Those are reasons or quick examples that I could share with you as to why that's the way it is.
So basically, it sounds like it's a case-by-case review when this question arises.
We would certainly have to look at it case by case for sure.
So bottom line, it sounds like we do what is best for the student.
In all cases.
Okay. That's what I wanted
Yep.
to hear. Thank you. Oh, Dr. Melton has done some good editing up here. When I was talking about the online application on page 1, under magnets and school choice, she pointed out that we could just simply delete the word online, where it says an online application, we could just say an application. If that would be suitable to the board to make that change.
The objection to that on the board?
You need a motion for that.
No, I think if there's no objection, Beth, do you have anything else? Question?
Let's see.
Beth, Ms. Hutchinson,
go
while you're
ahead.
looking at that, just for clarity, so that sentence would read, to make a selection, comma, application must be completed during the annual application process. And that, if that's the will of the board, we trust that you'll make that change, and that'll.
Right. And I'll just say, is that the will of the board? Everybody fine with that? We're good. Okay. So I'm not seeing objection, we're fine. So, any other question, follow-up? Okay, Dr. Melton, anything?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we had a motion, a second, discussion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our discussion agenda, but I forgot to read something a little earlier before I get to item 15, which is adjourning. We had a very nice note from, to the school board. I want you all to hear this. Dear D5 School Board, thank you for all you do to support us teachers. Big explanation. And your hard work does not go unnoticed. We really appreciate you. This is from the 2nd grade squad at Valentine Elementary. So I meant to read that earlier, but we do thank you. And we felt it Friday morning. They all really, really appreciate what goes on. So thank you. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Hammond,
I move that we adjourn.
do we have a second? Mr. White? Mr. White seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none? All in favor, please raise your hand. And we are adjourned. Thank you.